The first shovel of dirt hitting Dad's coffin sounded like a slap across the face, but that wasn't what made my blood freeze. It was seeing my brother Patrick walk up to the graveside with Jessica Lane on his arm, the woman I'd almost married 5 years ago. "Sorry we're late, Eli," Patrick said, that trademark smirk plastered across his face. Traffic was murder. Jessica wouldn't meet my eyes. She stood there in a black dress that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, her auburn hair pulled back in that way that always made my chest tight. She looked good. Too good. "Some guys just finish first," Patrick added, squeezing Jessica's hand. I wanted to punch him. Instead, I adjusted my tie and smiled. "Still working that office job, Pat?" Before he could answer, my wife Melanie stepped out of the funeral home's limo, her heels clicking against the cemetery pavement like a countdown timer. She'd insisted on the limo. Said it looked more appropriate for a Grant family funeral. Patrick's jaw dropped when he saw her. Melanie had that effect on people, tall, blonde, polished like a magazine cover. She wore grief like a designer accessory. "Patrick," she said, extending her hand. "It's been too long." "Melanie," his voice cracked slightly. "You look incredible." That's when I caught it, a quick glance between Jessica and Melanie. Not the polite acknowledgement of two women meeting at a funeral. Something else. Something that made the hair on my neck stand up. The service dragged on. Father Murphy mumbled about eternal rest while I watched Patrick steal glances at my wife. Jessica kept checking her phone. Melanie stood perfectly still, the grieving daughter-in-law, but her eyes were scanning the crowd like she was working a room. I'm Elliot Grant, by the way, Eli to most people. I run a home security business called Secure Home Solutions. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me busy installing cameras and alarm systems for paranoid suburbanites. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my days protecting other people's homes while mine was apparently falling apart. After the burial, we gathered at Patrick's place for the wake. He'd bought Dad's old house when the old man moved to the nursing home. Kept it exactly the same, down to the ugly brown carpet and wood paneling. The place smelled like cigarettes and regret. "Eli, honey," Melanie whispered, sliding up beside me with 2 glasses of wine. "We should probably leave soon. I have that early meeting tomorrow, another late meeting. She'd been having a lot of those lately." "With Simon Cross again?" I asked. Her smile flickered for just a second. "Among others. It's a big project. Simon Cross, project manager at TechFlow Solutions, where Melanie worked as an HR executive. Gym rat with perfect teeth and a Tesla. The kind of guy who wore cologne to the grocery store and called everyone buddy. "Eli." My neighbor Louise appeared at my elbow, wine glass already empty. "I was just telling Marcy how we never see you anymore. Always working so hard." Marcy was Melanie's best friend, a wannabe influencer who documented every meal and considered herself an expert on everyone else's marriage. "Oh, Eli's always busy," Marcy said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "But Melanie keeps herself entertained. All those late nights at the office with that handsome project manager." She giggled like it was a joke. It wasn't. Louise leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Speaking of which, I see a lot more of your wife's car at night than yours, dear. Hope everything's all right." My stomach dropped, but I kept smiling. "Just busy season, Louise. You know how it is. But I didn't know how it was. Not really." I was starting to realize I didn't know anything at all. The wake wound down around 10. Melanie had disappeared to powder her nose 20 minutes earlier and still hadn't returned. I found her in Patrick's kitchen, standing close to Jessica by the coffee maker. "Not as easy as you think," Jessica was saying. "These things have a way of getting complicated." "Only if you let them," Melanie replied. "The key is controlling the narrative." They stopped talking when they saw me. "Ready to go?" I asked. "Of course." Melanie's smile was perfect. Too perfect. The drive home was quiet. Our house sat at the end of Maple Street, a colonial with white shutters and a manicured lawn that Melanie insisted we maintain. Inside, everything was spotless and sterile, like a model home nobody actually lived in. I was brushing my teeth when I heard Melanie's phone buzz on the nightstand, then again and again. "Mel, your phone." "I'm in the shower," she called back. "Can you check it?" Might be work. I picked up her iPhone. The messages were from Mom. "Miss you already. Can't wait for tomorrow. Wear the red one." Melanie's mother had been dead for 3 years. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down. I stood there in our bedroom, listening to the shower run, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, something worse, something that tasted like metal and felt like a clenched fist. I waited until Melanie was asleep, then went downstairs to my home office. If there's one advantage to running a security business, it's knowing how technology works, how phones work, how people think they're being clever when they're really just being sloppy. I opened my laptop and got to work. It took me 40 minutes to clone Melanie's phone data, another 20 to crack the password on her mom contact. The photos loaded slowly, each one like a punch to the gut. Melanie. Simon Cross. Hotel rooms I didn't recognize. Positions I'd forgotten she was capable of. But the texts were worse than the photos. Months of planning. Not just the affair, that was almost secondary. They were planning to destroy me, frame me as unstable, maybe even dangerous, get me out of the house, out of the marriage, out of the way. "He's getting suspicious," Melanie had written 2 days ago. "Don't worry," Simon replied. "Stick to the plan. By Christmas, you'll be free and clear." What about his business? What about it? Guy who installs alarm systems for a living versus successful project manager. No contest. I sat in the dark, reading their plans to ruin my life, and something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but underneath it was something else, something patient and calculating. I'd spent 5 years building my business by being thorough, methodical, and 3 steps ahead of the competition. Time to put those skills to better use. I closed the laptop and headed upstairs. Melanie was still asleep, her blonde hair spread across the pillow like a halo. She looked peaceful, innocent. Tomorrow, I'd start evening the score. The next morning, Melanie left for work at 7:30 sharp, kissing my cheek and reminding me about dinner with the Hendersons on Saturday. The perfect wife routine. I waited 10 minutes, then followed her. TechFlow Solutions occupied 3 floors of a glass office building downtown. I parked across the street and watched Melanie's BMW pull into the executive lot. She sat in her car for a few minutes, checking her phone, then walked toward the building. Simon Cross was waiting by the entrance. He was exactly what I'd expected. 6'2", broad shoulders, the kind of tan that came from a salon. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my truck, and when Melanie reached him, he put his hand on the small of her back. They disappeared into the building together. I drove to the Rusty Nail, a dive bar on the wrong side of town that served breakfast and didn't ask questions. My buddy Chet was already there, working on his second cup of coffee and a plate of eggs that had seen better days. Chester Chet Morrison. Ex-military, ex-husband, ex-everything except loyal friend. We'd met 3 years ago when I installed a security system at his apartment complex. He was the kind of guy you wanted in your corner when things got ugly. "You look like hell," he said as I sat down. "Feel worse." I ordered coffee from Rita, the waitress who'd been working there since the Carter administration. "I need a favor, Chet." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves following someone around and taking pictures." Chet raised an eyebrow. "Your wife?" "Her boyfriend." "Ah." He nodded like this made perfect sense. "What's the play?" I pulled out a photo of Simon I'd printed from Melanie's phone. Simon Cross, works at TechFlow, drives a white Tesla, thinks he's God's gift to middle management. I need to know everything about him. Where he goes, who he talks to, what makes him tick. And then we find his weakness and exploit the hell out of it. Chet grinned. Now you're talking my language. I spent the rest of the morning setting up surveillance equipment in my own house. Motion-activated cameras in the garage, audio recorders in the kitchen and living room, GPS trackers for both cars. If Melanie and Simon wanted to play games, I'd make sure I knew all the rules. Around noon, I got a call from Darren Walsh, an IT guy at TechFlow, who'd hired me to install a security system at his house last month. We'd gotten along well. Both of us were tech nerds who'd been screwed over by people we trusted. "Hey, Eli," he said. "Weird question, but do you know Simon Cross?" My pulse quickened. "Why?" "Guy's been asking questions about you. Wanted to know if we were friends, what kind of work you did, whether you seemed stable or not. Struck me as odd." "What did you tell him?" "Told him to mind his own damn business, but I thought you should know." "I appreciate it, Darren. Actually, since I've got you on the phone, what's Simon's reputation around the office?" "Arrogant prick who thinks he's smarter than everyone else. Why?" "Just curious. Maybe we could grab a beer sometime. I'll buy." "Sure thing." I hung up and smiled. Simon was already making mistakes. Good. That afternoon, I followed Simon to his gym, an upscale place called Apex Fitness, where the monthly membership cost more than most people's car payments. I watched him through the windows, pumping iron and checking himself out in every mirror. While he was distracted by his own reflection, I slipped an AirTag under his gym bag. From now on, I'd know everywhere Simon Cross went. I was back home by 4, reviewing the day's surveillance footage, when Melanie called. "Hi, honey. I'm going to be late again tonight. This project is killing me." "The one with Simon?" A pause. "Among others." "Don't wait up." "I won't." At 6:30, my phone buzzed with an AirTag notification. Simon was at the Marriott downtown. 20 minutes later, Melanie's car appeared in the hotel parking lot. I drove over and waited. Through my binoculars, I could see them in a 5th-floor window. Simon had his shirt off. Melanie was laughing at something he'd said. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Still at the office. This is going to take all night." I took photos of her car in the hotel lot, time-stamped and geotagged, evidence for later. They emerged 2 hours later, Simon strutting like a peacock, Melanie checking her hair in her phone's camera. They kissed goodbye in the parking lot. Not a peck, but the kind of kiss that said they'd been doing this for a while. I followed Melanie home, staying well back. She pulled into our garage at 9:15, and I watched on my security feed as she sat in her car for 5 minutes, probably composing herself. When she came inside, she looked exhausted. "How was work?" I asked from the couch. "Brutal. Simon's been pushing everyone hard on this project. I'm beat." Poor Simon. Must be tough being such a demanding boss. She shot me a look. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just sympathizing with your situation." "Right." She headed upstairs. "I'm going to shower and go to bed." I waited until I heard the water running, then checked the audio recordings from the garage. Melanie had made a phone call while sitting in her car. "It's getting harder to keep lying to him," she'd said. "He's asking too many questions." "Relax," Simon's voice replied. "We stick to the plan. A few more weeks, and he won't be your problem anymore." "What if he finds out?" "He won't. Guy installs burglar alarms for soccer moms. He's not exactly criminal mastermind material." They'd both laughed. I sat in my office, listening to my wife and her lover mock me, and felt that cold, hard thing in my chest grow a little bigger. They thought I was stupid, harmless, just some blue-collar nobody who wouldn't fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I opened my laptop and started making plans. Real plans. The kind that would leave Simon Cross wishing he'd never heard the name Melanie Grant. By midnight, I had a comprehensive dossier on Simon Cross. His address, his schedule, his weaknesses. The man was a creature of habit. Gym every day at 5, coffee at the same Starbucks every morning, drinks with clients at the same 3 restaurants. More importantly, I'd found his pressure points. Simon was leveraged to the hilt. Expensive car, expensive apartment, expensive lifestyle, all funded by credit and a salary that barely covered it. He was also vain, insecure, and had a reputation for cutting corners at work. I could work with that. The next morning, I called Chet. "I need you to do some reconnaissance at Apex Fitness," I said. "Get a day pass, work out near Simon Cross, see what you can learn." "What am I looking for?" "Anything useful. The guy's a narcissist. He'll probably tell you his life story if you stroke his ego right." "Consider it done." I spent the day installing a security system for the Johnsons, a nice retired couple who wanted to feel safer after a break-in down the U Street. Honest work for honest people. It felt good. That evening, Chet called with his report. "Your boy Simon's a talker," he said. "Spent 20 minutes telling me about his Tesla, his promotion prospects, and his complicated relationship situation. Apparently, he's dating a married woman who's going to leave her husband soon." "Did he mention the husband?" "Oh yeah. Called him a small-time loser who doesn't appreciate what he has. Said the guy would probably cry when she left him." The cold thing in my chest turned to ice. "Anything else?" "Yeah. He's planning some kind of romantic gesture for this weekend. Wants to take her somewhere dangerous and exciting to show her what a real man is like." I knew exactly where he meant. The old Riverside paper mill had been abandoned for 10 years, but it was a popular spot for teenagers and thrill-seekers. Plenty of places to be alone. Plenty of places for accidents to happen. "Thanks, Chet. I owe you. Just promise me I get to watch when you take this guy down." Front row seat. I hung up and checked the AirTag data. Simon was at the hotel again. Melanie's car was there too, right on schedule. But this time, I wasn't just going to watch. This time, I was going to introduce myself. The Riverside paper mill squatted on the edge of town like a concrete cancer, its broken windows staring blindly at the river. I'd been here before, years ago, when I was a teenager looking for trouble. Now I was a 42-year-old man looking for justice. I parked behind a stand of trees and made my way through the chain-link fence. The main building was 5 stories of rusted machinery and rotting catwalks, perfect for what I had in mind. Simon's Tesla pulled up at 8:30, right on time. He got out first, looking around nervously, then helped Melanie from the passenger seat. She was wearing a red dress, the one he'd requested in his texts. "Are you sure this is safe?" I heard her ask as they approached the building. "Trust me, babe. I know what I'm doing." They disappeared inside. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. I found them on the 3rd floor, Simon showing off by walking along a rusted beam 20 feet above the factory floor. Melanie watched from a safer platform, her phone's flashlight cutting through the darkness. "This is incredible," Simon called down to her. "The view from up here is amazing." "Be careful," she said. But she was smiling. The kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. I climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, moving quietly through the shadows. Above me, a conveyor system stretched across the ceiling, held up by chains and pulleys that had seen better days. Perfect. I found what I was looking for in an old storage room. 50-pound bags of flour, left over from some long-forgotten renovation project. The bags were water-damaged and ready to burst. I hauled one to the catwalk directly above where Simon was showing off and waited. "Told you I'd show you what a real man does with a little danger," Simon was saying. "Your husband probably hasn't taken a risk in his entire life." "Eli's not exactly the adventurous type," Melanie agreed. That stung, but it also gave me the opening I needed. "Funny thing about risk," I called down. "Sometimes it finds you when you least expect it." They both froze. Simon nearly lost his balance on the beam. "Who's there?" he shouted. I stepped into the light, the flour bag balanced on the catwalk railing. "Hello, Simon." Nice night for a romantic getaway. Melanie's face went white. Eli? What are you doing here? Same thing you are, apparently, exploring new possibilities. Simon had recovered from his initial shock and was trying to project confidence. Look, buddy, I don't know what you think you saw. I saw my wife's car in the hotel parking lot 3 times this week. I saw the texts on her phone. I saw the photos. I hefted the flower bag slightly. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Eli, please, Melanie started. Let me explain. Explain what? How you've been planning to frame me as unstable? How you've been telling people I'm dangerous? How you and Simon here have been laughing about what a small-time loser I am? Simon's face flushed. Now listen here. I dropped the flower bag. 50 pounds of water-damaged flour exploded across Simon like a white bomb, coating him from head to toe. He stumbled backward, slipped on the beam, and fell 15 feet into a puddle of stagnant water that had collected on the factory floor. Oops, I said. Gravity's a real bitch, isn't it? Simon came up sputtering, covered in flour paste and rotting water. He looked like a deranged mime who'd been dunked in a septic tank. You're insane, he screamed. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. Tell them how you were trespassing in an abandoned building with another man's wife. I'm sure that'll go over great with HR. I climbed down to the second floor, taking my time. Simon was trying to wipe flour out of his eyes while Melanie stood frozen on her platform. Here's what's going to happen, I said, walking slowly toward Simon. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stop spreading lies about me. And you're going to pray I don't get creative with my revenge. You can't threaten me, Simon said, but his voice was shaking. I'm not threatening you. I'm educating you. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the fierce sweat mixing with his expensive cologne. See, you made one big mistake, Simon. You assumed I was harmless because I install alarm systems for a living. But you know what I learned in this business? Security isn't about the equipment. It's about understanding how people think, their patterns, their weaknesses. I leaned in close, my voice dropping to a whisper. And you, Simon Cross, are weak. You're leveraged up to your eyeballs, your job performance is mediocre at best, and you have the emotional maturity of a teenager. You're not a threat to me. You're barely an inconvenience. Simon tried to swing at me. I saw it coming from a mile away, stepped aside, and watched him slip on the wet concrete. He went down hard, his expensive suit now decorated with flour, water, and industrial grime. Stay down, I advised. It suits you. I turned to Melanie, who was still standing on her platform like a statue. As for you, I said, we'll talk at home, assuming you still remember where that is. I walked away, leaving them in the dark factory with nothing but Simon's phone flashlight and their shattered illusions of cleverness. Simon's Tesla was unlocked, another sign of his arrogance. I opened the glove compartment and found his registration, insurance papers, and a parking pass for TechFlow Solutions. I took photos of everything, then used my key to carve a simple message into the hood. Cheater. By the time I got home, I felt better than I had in weeks. The cold, hard thing in my chest had warmed up considerably. My phone rang at 11:30. Melanie. Eli, please, we need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone, when I get home. If you get home, that's entirely up to you. She was quiet for a long moment. I'll be there in an hour. I waited in the living room, a glass of whiskey in my hand and a folder of printed evidence on the coffee table. When Melanie's car pulled into the garage, I watched her on the security monitor. She sat in the BMW for 10 minutes, probably trying to figure out what to say. She came in through the kitchen, still wearing the red dress, but looking like she'd aged 10 years in the past 3 hours. Eli, sit down. She sat on the opposite end of the couch, as far from me as possible. How long? I asked. 3 months. Why? I don't know. Wrong answer. I opened the folder and spread out the photos, hotel receipts, text messages, screenshots of their plans to destroy me. Try again. Melanie looked at the evidence and started crying. Not the pretty tears of a movie heroine, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone whose world was collapsing. You weren't paying attention to me, she said between sobs. You were always working, always distracted. Simon made me feel special. So you decided to frame me as an abusive husband? That wasn't my idea. That was Simon's plan. But you went along with it. She nodded, still crying. Here's what's going to happen, I said, closing the folder. You're going to end it with Simon. Completely. No contact, no goodbye, nothing. You're going to tell him it was a mistake, and you're committed to saving your marriage. Okay. You're going to stop spreading lies about me to your friends, your coworkers, and anyone else who'll listen. I will. And you're going to help me. Destroy Simon Cross. She looked up, tears still streaming down her face. What? You heard me. Simon made this personal when he decided to come after my reputation and my business. Now he's going to learn what happens when you pick a fight with someone who has nothing left to lose. Eli, I can't. You can and you will. Because if you don't, I'm going to divorce you and make sure everyone knows exactly why. Your job, your reputation, your precious social standing, all of it goes away. Melanie stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. What do you want me to do? I smiled for the first time all night. I'm glad you asked. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to TechFlow Solutions. Not to confront anyone. That would come later. Today was about reconnaissance. I parked across the street and watched the morning routine. Employees arriving with coffee and resignation, security guards checking badges, the daily dance of corporate life. Simon's Tesla wasn't in the lot yet. At 9:15, he arrived. Even from a distance, I could see he was limping slightly, and his usual swagger was missing. The flower incident had left its mark. I waited until he disappeared into the building, then called Darren Walsh. Hey, it's Eli Grant. You free for that beer tonight? Absolutely. O'Malley's at 7? Perfect. And Darren, bring your appetite for gossip. I've got some interesting stories about Simon Cross. Now you're talking. I spent the afternoon at home, reviewing the surveillance footage from the past week and building a comprehensive timeline of Simon and Melanie's affair. Every hotel visit, every lie, every moment they thought they were being clever. But I was also looking for something else. Patterns in Simon's behavior that I could exploit. The man was a creature of habit, and habits could be weaponized. At 6:30, Melanie came home from work looking like she'd been through a blender. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared. How was your day? I asked pleasantly. Terrible. Simon's been acting strange, paranoid. He thinks someone's watching him. Imagine that. Eli, what did you do to him at the mill? I introduced myself properly. Why? He wants me to file a police report. Says you assaulted him. I laughed. With what? Gravity? Good luck proving that. He's talking about getting a restraining order. Let him try. I'd love to see him explain to a judge why he was trespassing in an abandoned building with another man's wife. Melanie sat down heavily, her shoulders sagging. This is spiraling out of control. No, it's just getting started. Did you do what I asked? I told him I wanted to cool things down for a while. He didn't take it well. I bet he didn't. What else? I can't do this, Eli. I can't help you destroy him. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken that morning, Simon's keyed Tesla in the TechFlow parking lot. Someone had also slashed his tires and left a note on his windshield. Still feeling dangerous? I didn't do that, I said, but I know who did. Who? You'd be surprised how many people at TechFlow can't stand Simon Cross. All it took was the right person finding out about his extracurricular activities. That was a lie. I'd done it myself at 5 in the morning, but Melanie didn't need to know that. "You're scaring me," she whispered. "Good. You should be scared, because this is what happens when you try to destroy someone's life. Sometimes they fight back." I left her in the living room and drove to O'Malley's, a sports bar near the office park where TechFlow's employees like to unwind. Darren was already there, nursing a beer and watching the game. "You look like a man with a story to tell," he said as I sat down. "Several stories, actually, all about your favorite project manager." Over the next 2 hours, I told Darren everything. The affair, the hotel meetings, the plan to frame me as unstable. I showed him photos, played him audio recordings, laid out the entire conspiracy. "Holy shit," Darren said when I finished. "Simon's been planning to take you down?" "Among other things, the man's got a god complex." "What are you going to do about it?" "That depends. How much do you hate your job?" Darren grinned. "Enough to take some risks." "Good, because I'm going to need an inside man." We spent another hour planning. Darren would keep his ears open for any gossip about Simon, monitor his computer usage, and look for anything that might violate company policy. In exchange, I'd give him a friends and family discount on a complete home security upgrade. "There's something else," Darren said as we were leaving. "Simon's been asking IT to monitor your wife's computer. Wants to see if she's been in contact with you during work hours." "On what grounds?" "Says he's concerned about workplace harassment. Thinks you might be stalking her." The audacity was breathtaking. Simon was trying to use company resources to build a case against me while he was screwing my wife in hotel rooms. "Can you block that request?" "Already did." Told him he needed HR approval first. "And HR is?" "Your wife's department." We both laughed at the irony. I drove home feeling optimistic for the first time in weeks. Simon Cross thought he was playing chess, but he was actually playing checkers, and I was 3 moves ahead. Melanie was waiting up when I got home, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "Simon called," she said without preamble. "Someone vandalized his car at work. He thinks it was you. Did you tell him it wasn't?" "I tried, but he's not listening. He wants to meet tomorrow night. Says we need to talk about the situation." "Where?" "The mill again. He thinks it's romantic." I almost choked on my water. "Romantic?" "The place smells like dead fish and industrial chemicals. He says it's where we can be alone, where we can plan our next move." "What next move?" "He wants me to leave you. Tomorrow. Pack my things and move in with him." I set down my glass and looked at her carefully. "And what did you tell him?" "I said I'd think about it." "Good answer. Here's what you're really going to do." I spent the next 20 minutes laying out the plan. Melanie listened with growing horror, but she didn't interrupt. She was finally beginning to understand that she wasn't just a participant in this drama. She was a weapon, and I was about to use her. "I can't do that to him," she said when I finished. "You can, and you will. Because the alternative is much worse." "What alternative?" I pulled out a manila envelope I'd prepared earlier. Inside were divorce papers, copies of all the evidence I'd gathered, and a letter to the HR department at TechFlow detailing Simon's harassment of a married employee. "Your choice," I said. "Help me finish this, or I finish it without you. But either way, Simon Cross is going down." Melanie stared at the envelope like it was a poisonous snake. Finally, she nodded. "What do you need me to do?" I smiled. "Just be yourself." That should be more than enough. The next evening, I positioned myself in the mill an hour before the meeting. This time, I came prepared. Night vision goggles, recording equipment, and a few surprises that Simon wouldn't see coming. At 8 o'clock sharp, I watched Simon's Tesla pull up to the mill. He'd replaced the slashed tires, but the scratches on the hood were still visible, a reminder that his perfect life was starting to crack. Melanie arrived 5 minutes later, right on schedule. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, practical clothes for what was about to happen. They met at the entrance to the building, and I could hear their conversation through the wireless microphone I'd planted in Melanie's purse. "You look tired," Simon said. "I am tired. This whole situation is exhausting. It doesn't have to be. We can end this tonight. Pack your things, leave Eli, and start fresh." "It's not that simple, Simon." "Why not? You said you loved me. I do love you. But love isn't enough to build a life on." I smiled in the darkness. Melanie was sticking to the script perfectly. They climbed to the third floor, the same platform where Simon had shown off 2 nights earlier. This time, he was more cautious, staying away from the rusted beams. "I've been thinking about what happened with your husband," Simon said. "The guy's obviously unstable. Dangerous. Maybe. Or maybe he's just protecting what's his. You're not his property, Melanie. You're a grown woman who can make her own choices. And what if I choose to stay with him?" Simon's voice turned cold. "That would be a mistake. A big mistake." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. Your husband made an enemy when he humiliated me. I don't forget things like that. Perfect. I was recording every word." "What are you going to do?" Melanie asked. "Whatever it takes. I've got friends in HR, contacts in the business community. I can make life very difficult for Eli Grant. And if I don't leave him, then you'll go down with him." That was my cue. I activated the sound system I'd rigged throughout the building, speakers connected to my phone, positioned to create an echo effect that would make my voice seem to come from everywhere at once. "The only one going down is you, Simon." Simon spun around, looking for the source of the voice. "Where are you, you coward?" "I'm everywhere. I'm watching. I'm listening. I'm learning. Show yourself." "Why? So you can threaten me like you just threatened my wife?" Simon's face went pale as he realized I'd heard everything. "That's right," I continued, my voice echoing through the empty building. "I heard your plans to destroy my business. Your threats against Melanie. Your pathetic attempts to play puppet master. Melanie, we need to leave, now." But Melanie didn't move. She stood on the platform, looking down at Simon with something like disgust. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said. "Eli was right about you. You are weak." Simon stared at her in shock. "What?" "You heard me. You're a weak, insecure little man who needs to tear others down to feel important. I actually felt sorry for you." "You bitch, you set me up." "No, Simon. You set yourself up. I just gave you enough rope to hang yourself." Simon lunged toward the stairs, probably planning to find me and settle this face to face. But I'd prepared for that possibility too. As he reached the stairwell, I triggered the second part of my trap. A bucket of ice-cold water, rigged to a motion sensor, dumped its contents directly onto Simon's head. He slipped on the wet stairs and tumbled down half a flight, landing in a heap at the second-floor landing. Not seriously hurt, but definitely humiliated. Again. "Stay down, Simon," I called out. "It's better for everyone." But Simon Cross wasn't done making mistakes. He pulled out his phone and started dialing. "I'm calling the police. This is harassment. This is assault. Go ahead. Tell them how you've been having an affair with a married woman, trespassing on private property, and threatening to destroy an innocent man's life. I'm sure they'll be very sympathetic." Simon hesitated, his finger hovering over the call button. "That's what I thought," I said. "Now listen carefully, because I'm only going to say this once. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stop spreading lies about me. And you're going to pray that I don't decide to get creative with my revenge. Because this is me being nice." Simon looked up at Melanie, water dripping from his hair, his expensive clothes soaked and dirty. "This isn't over," he said. "You're right," I replied. "It's just getting started." The next morning brought the first real consequences of my war against Simon Cross. Darren called at 7 a.m., barely able to contain his excitement. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Simon's been suspended pending an HR investigation." I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. For what? Inappropriate conduct with a subordinate employee. Someone filed an anonymous complaint yesterday evening, complete with photos and documentation. I looked over at Melanie, who was pretending to be asleep. "Any idea who might have filed such a complaint?" "None whatsoever," Darren said, and I could hear him grinning. "But whoever it was had some very detailed evidence. Hotel receipts, text messages, the works. Imagine that. There's more. IT found some irregularities in Simon's computer usage. Looks like he's been using company resources for personal business. That's a fireable offense." "What kind of personal business?" "Background checks on you, for starters. He's been using our corporate account with a private investigation firm to dig up dirt on your business, your finances, your history, all unauthorized. The irony was perfect. Simon had been so focused on destroying me that he'd destroyed himself." "How long is the suspension?" "Indefinite. And between you and me, I don't think he's coming back. The company takes this kind of thing very seriously." After I hung up, Melanie finally opened her eyes. "I heard," she said quietly. "How do you feel about it?" She was quiet for a long moment. Relieved. And terrified. Terrified of what? Of you. Of what you're capable of. I got out of bed and started getting dressed. "You should be terrified. You tried to destroy my life, Melanie. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? I never meant for it to go this far. But it did. And now we all have to live with the results." I left her in bed and went downstairs to make coffee. My phone was buzzing with notifications, text messages, missed calls, voicemails. Word was spreading fast. The first call was from Louise, my neighbor. She could barely contain her glee. "Eli, dear, have you heard? That handsome man from Melanie's office, the one with the fancy car, he's been arrested." "Arrested?" "Well, not arrested exactly, but there are police cars at his apartment building. Something about harassment and stalking. The whole neighborhood's talking about it. I hadn't called the police, but someone had. Probably one of Simon's other victims. A man like that didn't limit his predatory behavior to just one woman." The second call was from Chet. "You beautiful bastard," he said. "I don't know how you did it, but Simon Cross is finished. The whole town's talking about it." "What are they saying?" "That he's been fired for sexual harassment, that he's been stalking multiple women, that his fancy lifestyle was all funded by credit cards and lies." Chet paused. "Is any of it true?" "All of it." "Damn. Remind me never to get on your bad side." The third call was from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Eli Grant?" The voice was female, nervous. "Yes." "My name is Rebecca Chen. I work at TechFlow Solutions. I heard about what happened with Simon Cross, and I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For stopping him. He's been harassing me for months, making inappropriate comments, sending unwanted messages, threatening my job when I rejected him. I was too scared to report it, but when I heard about the investigation, I finally came forward." "How did you know I was involved?" "Darren Walsh told me. He said you were the one who exposed Simon's affair with your wife." That gave me the courage to speak up. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Simon had hurt more people than I'd realized. "I'm glad you found your voice," I said. "There are others, too. At least 3 women are coming forward with similar stories. Simon Cross is never going to work in this town again." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and processing what I'd unleashed. I'd set out to destroy one man's life and ended up exposing a pattern of predatory behavior that had victimized multiple women. Maybe I was the good guy after all. My phone rang again. This time it was Simon. "You son of a bitch," he snarled. "You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life. I just documented it. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to take everything you have." With what money? I heard you got fired and evicted, and that your credit cards are maxed out. Simon was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, desperate. Please, I'll do anything. I'll leave town. I'll never contact Melanie again. You'll what? Apologize? Make amends? Undo the damage you've done to those women you harassed? I never meant to hurt anyone, but you did. And now you have to live with the consequences. What do you want from me? I want you gone, out of town, out of state, out of my life. And I want you to remember this feeling the next time you think about destroying someone else's marriage. And if I don't leave, then I release the rest of the evidence. The photos of you with other women, the financial records showing how you've been embezzling from company expense accounts, the recordings of you threatening me and my wife. Simon's breath caught. You're bluffing. Try me. He hung up. That afternoon, I drove to TechFlow Solutions to meet with Darren. The parking lot was buzzing with activity, employees standing in clusters, gossiping about the scandal that had rocked their company. It's like Christmas morning around here, Darren said as we walked to his car. Everyone's celebrating Simon's downfall. Was he really that hated? Despised. The guy was a cancer on the whole organization. Took credit for other people's work, threw his subordinates under the bus, hit on every woman in the building. Management kept him around because he was good at schmoozing clients, but everyone else wanted him gone. We drove to a coffee shop away from the office, where Darren filled me in on the latest developments. HR is conducting a full investigation, he said. They've found evidence of harassment, misuse of company resources, and possible embezzlement. Simon's not just fired, he's probably going to face criminal charges. What about Melanie? She's cooperating fully. Provided all the evidence they asked for, testified about Simon's inappropriate behavior. I think she's going to be okay. And the other women? 3 more have come forward so far. There might be others. The company's bringing in an outside firm to investigate the whole culture of the organization. I sipped my coffee and watched the traffic go by. In less than a week, I'd gone from being the victim of a conspiracy to being the catalyst for a complete corporate house cleaning. There's something else, Darren said. Simon cleaned out his office last night. Security footage shows him taking files, computer equipment, personal items. But here's the interesting part. He also took some things that didn't belong to him. Like what? Client files, proprietary software, financial records, the kind of stuff that could be used for corporate espionage or starting a competing business. That's a felony. Exactly. And since he's already under investigation, this just makes everything worse. We finished our coffee and drove back to TechFlow. As we pulled into the parking lot, I saw a familiar white Tesla parked near the entrance. Simon was back. What's he doing here? I asked. No idea. He's not supposed to be on company property. We watched from Darren's car as Simon emerged from the Tesla, looking haggard and desperate. He was wearing the same clothes from the night before, his hair unwashed, his face unshaven. He walked toward the building entrance, but security stopped him before he could go inside. There was a brief conversation, then Simon started shouting. Even from a distance, I could see he was falling apart. Should we call the police? Darren asked. Not yet. Let's see how this plays out. Simon's shouting match with security was drawing a crowd. Employees were gathering at the windows, watching the spectacle unfold. Someone was recording it on their phone. Then Melanie appeared. She walked out of the building, moving slowly and deliberately toward Simon. She looked calm, composed, professional, everything he wasn't. I can't hear what they're saying, Darren said. I pulled out my phone and opened an app I'd installed, a directional microphone that could pick up conversations from a distance. It was technically illegal to use without consent, but I was past worrying about technicalities. Told you to stay away, Melanie was saying. You ruined my life, Simon replied. You set me up. I did what I had to do to protect myself and my husband. Your husband is a psychopath. He's been stalking me, harassing me, destroying my property. Your property? You mean the car you can't afford? The apartment you're about to lose? The job you just got fired from? Simon stepped closer to Melanie, his fists clenched. You think you're so smart. You think you've won. I think this conversation is over. Melanie turned to walk away, but Simon grabbed her arm. That was my limit. I got out of Darren's car and walked toward them, not running, but moving with purpose. Simon saw me coming and let go of Melanie's arm. Stay back, he warned. I'm not afraid of you anymore. You should be. I stopped about 10 feet away, close enough to intervene if necessary, but far enough to avoid escalating the situation. Let me guess, I said. You came here to beg for your job back, or maybe to steal more company property. Which is it? I came here to tell the truth about you. About what you really are. And what am I, Simon? A stalker. A predator. A man who uses fear and intimidation to control his wife. I laughed. That's rich, coming from someone who just got fired for sexual harassment. Those allegations are false. You manufactured all of it. Did I manufacture Rebecca Chen? How about the other women who came forward? Did I brainwash them too? Simon's face went pale. He hadn't known about the other victims. That's right, I continued. You're not just a cheater and a liar. You're a serial predator, and now everyone knows it. Simon looked around at the crowd that had gathered. Dozens of his former co-workers were watching, listening, recording. His humiliation was complete and public. This isn't over, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is. Security escorted Simon off the property while the crowd dispersed. Melanie walked back toward the building, but I caught up with her before she reached the entrance. Are you okay? She nodded. He's really lost it, hasn't he? Completely. But he's not our problem anymore. Eli. She paused, struggling with something. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. I know you are. What happens now? With us, I mean. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She looked older, more fragile, but also somehow more real than she had in years. I don't know, I said honestly, but we'll figure it out. That evening, I got a call from Chet. You need to see this, he said. Turn on Channel 7. I flipped to the local news just in time to see a breaking story. Local tech executive arrested for corporate espionage. The reporter was standing outside TechFlow Solutions, explaining how Simon Cross had been arrested for stealing proprietary company information and attempting to sell it to competitors. Cross, who was terminated earlier this week for sexual harassment, allegedly returned to company premises to steal sensitive files and software, the reporter said. He was arrested at his apartment this evening with over $50,000 worth of stolen intellectual property. The news story included a photo of Simon being led away in handcuffs, his face hidden behind his hands. I turned off the TV and poured myself a drink. It was over. Simon Cross was finished, fired, arrested, and facing years in prison. His life was in ruins and he had no one to blame but himself. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You win. I'm leaving town tonight. You'll never see me again. I deleted the message without responding. Outside, I could hear Louise talking to another neighbor about the scandal, her voice carrying across the yards in the evening air. By tomorrow, the whole town would know the story. Simon Cross would be remembered as the predator who got what he deserved, and I would be remembered as the man who brought him down. I raised my glass in a silent toast to justice served cold, then drank deeply and smiled.